In 2008, while millions lost their homes, one private memo leaked from a Wall Street boardroom. It revealed a signal hidden in plain sight that predicted the crash months before it hit. The public never saw it, but billionaires did, and they've been using it ever since. They don't fear the recession. They fear you learning the code they followed to turn every collapse into a fortune. Today, we break it open, because once you spot this signal, you'll realize the next crisis has already begun. And the first piece of it? It's ticking right now.
They say recessions strike like lightning, sudden, unpredictable, unstoppable. But the elite know better. They know storms don't just appear. They build, slowly, silently, in ways only a few can read. For them, every crash begins with a whisper. In the last quarter of 2007, when the world was celebrating record markets, something invisible started to unfold. Trading desks in New York and London grew eerily quiet. Screens that normally flashed with chaotic trades froze on numbers no one dared to discuss aloud. Behind closed doors, meetings stretched into the night. A few insiders, hedge fund managers, bond traders, people with access to data you will never see, were repositioning billions, not in panic, in precision. Why? Because they had spotted the anomaly. It wasn't on CNBC. It wasn't in the Wall Street Journal. It was buried deep in obscure credit indices and derivatives nobody outside the system even knew existed. One of them, the ABX index, was quietly collapsing. Mortgage-backed securities, the very instruments propping up the housing market, were starting to rot from the inside. To the public, everything looked fine. To those watching, it was the sound of a crack spreading across glass that was about to shatter. This isn't unique to 2008. Go back to the dot-com bubble in 2000. Months before the crash, insiders were already selling tech stocks in silence, while media headlines screamed, "New economy boom." In 1987, before Black Monday wiped out 23% of the Dow in a single day, certain portfolios shifted into bonds weeks before the collapse. They didn't guess, they saw. What they see isn't magic, it's access. Access to data streams you'll never have, to relationships with central banks and corporations that feed them the truth before it's public. While you watch the news, they watch the numbers behind the numbers. And when the pattern appears, when liquidity dries, when volatility whispers, when debt curves bend in ways the textbooks don't explain, they act. This is why every crash feels like a surprise to the public, but never to them. By the time headlines break, they're already positioned. By the time the average investor panics, they're counting profits. Imagine knowing what they know. Imagine spotting the storm while everyone else enjoys the calm. This is the advantage they protect, the reason they'll never hand you the playbook. But today, you're seeing the first page. And if this revelation is opening your eyes, tap that like button. Not because it helps this channel, but because every single share forces this truth into places they wish would stay dark. Because this is only the first layer. The signals are real, the patterns repeat. And what happens when those first cracks appear reveals a game far more dangerous than you think. The next move they make isn't just about survival, it's about control. And once you see how they do it, you'll understand why recessions aren't accidents. They're opportunities, but only for those who know where to look. When the first cracks appear, most people freeze. They cling to hope. They listen to reassurances from officials saying, "Markets are stable, there's nothing to fear." But in the upper floors of glass towers, where the real game is played, fear is replaced with strategy. This is the moment billionaires wait for. While the public watches stock tickers bleed red, they're already in motion. Funds flow quietly across borders. Assets are moved like chess pieces. They short collapsing sectors with precision. They scoop up distressed companies for pennies on the dollar. They use instruments the average investor doesn't even know exist: credit default swaps, synthetic positions, complex derivatives, tools designed to turn chaos into profit. In 2008, as banks fell one by one, a few hedge funds delivered returns exceeding 100%. John Paulson's infamous bet against the housing bubble turned $15 billion in profit. But here's what the headlines never told you. His move wasn't a gamble. It was a calculation based on signals almost no one else could see. Go back further. During the Asian financial crisis of 1997, while entire nations watched their currencies collapse, a few elite players, including hedge fund giants, had already positioned themselves to profit from the fall. In 1987, before Black Monday erased 23% of the Dow in a single day, certain portfolios had quietly shifted to safe havens weeks before the crash. History whispers the same truth. They don't guess, they prepare. The public believes recessions destroy wealth. For them, recessions transfer it. Every downturn is a clearance sale for those holding cash and courage. While fear grips the masses, they buy what everyone else is dumping. Blue-chip stocks at historic lows, real estate abandoned at fire sale prices, entire companies sold for a fraction of their value. And when the dust settles, they own more than before. More assets, more influence, more control. This is why after every recession, the gap between the wealthy and everyone else doesn't just widen, it explodes. The pattern is ruthless but precise. First, they exit quietly while the market still looks healthy. Then they profit as the collapse unfolds, using tools the average investor has never heard of. Then finally, they re-enter at the bottom, stronger and richer than ever. This isn't luck. It's the silent harvest, the stage where fear becomes opportunity for the few who know the rules. And here's the truth they fear. If the public ever understood these moves, if you could see the cycle as clearly as they do, the advantage would vanish. That's why these tactics are hidden behind jargon, behind layers of complexity, behind walls you're not meant to climb. If you're still here, it means you're not like the rest. You're watching from the outside, but starting to think like an insider. And if you want to keep pulling this thread, to see the entire playbook as we reveal it piece by piece, hit subscribe now, because every single person who understands this makes the system just a little less safe for those who profit from your ignorance. Because what follows this stage is even darker. After the harvest, the rules of the game shift, rewritten in secret rooms, ensuring they stay on top no matter how deep the crash goes. And that's where we're heading next.
After every crisis, while the public struggles to rebuild their lives, a new set of rules quietly emerges. Not laws debated on television, not policies explained in the headlines. These are the unwritten rules, the hidden playbook that billionaires and power brokers follow to make sure they always win the next round. You've seen hints of this playbook before: bailouts, emergency stimulus packages, interest rate cuts that seem to appear out of nowhere. But these are just the surface, the part you're allowed to see. The real game happens behind closed doors, in meetings the public will never hear about. It happens in the whispers of central bankers, in late-night calls between CEOs and policymakers, in documents stamped confidential that circulate only among the elite. Take 2009. While millions lost their homes, the very banks that fueled the housing bubble were not only rescued but rewarded.
Trillions in emergency programs were unleashed not into the hands of struggling families, but into the balance sheets of institutions deemed too big to fail. The Federal Reserve opened special lending windows where money flowed at nearly zero cost, a privilege unavailable to ordinary investors. And hedge funds with the right relationships, they leveraged this cheap capital to scoop up distressed assets at fractions of their value, assets the public had been forced to sell at a loss. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's a structure, one that ensures survival for those at the top while everyone else fights for scraps. For insiders, every crisis is a ladder. For the rest, it's a trap. The playbook doesn't stop there. It contains other rules, subtler but just as lethal. Rule 1. Control the narrative. Keep the public calm while the insiders move. Convince them the worst is over, even when it's just beginning. Rule 2. Shape policy long before anyone realizes. Lobbyists and think tanks draft the laws that will pass months later, creating loopholes perfectly tailored to those who wrote them. Rule 3. Emerge as the savior. After orchestrating moves that deepened the crisis, the same institutions present themselves as the solution, consolidating even more power in the aftermath. Look at what happens after every recession. The number of small banks shrinks, swallowed or destroyed. The largest institutions, the ones with influence, emerge stronger. Competition fades, power concentrates. And regulations that were supposed to prevent another disaster slowly diluted, rewritten by those who benefit from the chaos. It happened after the Great Depression, when the financial elite used the turmoil to consolidate entire industries. It happened after the 1987 crash, when deregulation quietly accelerated. It happened after the dot-com bubble, when giant tech players used the wreckage to absorb competitors and secure dominance. The cycle repeats because the playbook demands it. And if you think this is just history, think again. Even today, while most eyes are fixed on short-term market moves, acquisitions are happening in the shadows. Companies with cash reserves are buying up weakened rivals. Certain industries receive quiet support, while others are allowed to die. Every move is calculated, every decision part of the same pattern refined over decades. There is a reason this playbook is never taught in schools. There is a reason you won't hear it explained on mainstream news. Because understanding it means seeing the system for what it is, not chaotic, but controlled. And yet, there's one final rule. The page of the playbook they guard more than anything else. It's not about bailouts or influence. It's about timing. A pattern so precise that it reveals when every crash begins and when the next recovery secretly starts, long before anyone else knows. That last page is the one they fear you'll see. Because once you understand it, you stop being a pawn in their game. You start thinking like them, and they can't afford that. The final piece is coming into view, and it leads to the most dangerous truth of all, the one hidden in plain sight, waiting for those who dare to look. Every crash feels different. Different causes, different headlines, different victims. But when you peel away the noise, a chilling pattern emerges, a sequence so consistent that those who know it can predict where the market is headed long before the rest. This is the part of the playbook they fear the most, because this isn't just about reacting to crises. It's about knowing exactly when to act, when to wait, and when to strike. The pattern begins quietly, long before the public senses danger. First, there's the distortion phase. Markets soar, valuations detach from reality, and every warning voice is drowned out by euphoria. The crowd believes the good times will last forever. Insiders,
smile, and sell. Then comes the tightening. Interest rates shift, credit dries up, and a few obscure indicators flash red. These signs are ignored by almost everyone, but not by the elite. They know liquidity is the oxygen of markets, and they can smell when the air is running out. Next is the trigger, a single event that breaks the illusion. It could be a bank collapse, a geopolitical shock, or even a sudden policy change. The public sees chaos. They see opportunity. Because the trigger isn't the cause, it's the signal that the harvest can begin. And finally comes the accumulation, when prices hit rock bottom and fear is at its peak. This is when insiders quietly buy everything of value. Stocks, real estate, entire companies snapped up while everyone else is too terrified to move. It's a phase so critical that families with generational wealth treat it like a sacred ritual, passing down the knowledge of when to step in while the world burns. Look back and you'll see this pattern everywhere. The Roaring '20s followed by the crash of 1929, the tech bubble bursting in 2000, the housing bubble exploding in 2008. Different eras, same script. Each time, those who understood the pattern emerged stronger, while the rest were left picking up the pieces. Here's what makes this so dangerous. The pattern is repeating right now. Certain insiders are already moving, quietly positioning while the public is distracted by headlines and short-term noise. If history holds, and it always has, they are already 3 steps ahead. They don't just watch charts, they watch flows of capital invisible to the public. They track the moves of central banks not by words, but by actions. And when all the pieces align, they move with absolute certainty. This is the secret they will never say out loud, because if the public ever recognized this rhythm, this heartbeat of the market, the advantage would vanish. You'd no longer be playing their game, you'd be playing your own. The pattern is not magic. It's hidden in plain sight, disguised as random chaos. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. Every headline becomes a clue. Every crash becomes a message. And as this investigation comes to its final moment, one question remains. If the forbidden pattern is already unfolding, how much time is left before the next storm hits full force? You've just seen what they never wanted you to piece together. The whispers before the storm, the silent harvest, the hidden playbook, and the forbidden pattern that connects them all. Recessions aren't random. They're orchestrated moments, storms where chaos reigns on the many, and opportunity shines on the few who know where to stand. For decades, they've kept this knowledge sealed away, passed only through closed doors and silent handshakes. But now, you've seen it. You've felt the rhythm they follow, the cycle they exploit, the secrets they guard like treasure. So the question is no longer if the next storm is coming. It's whether you'll be ready to read the signs they hope you'll ignore. If this investigation opened your eyes, hit that like button, not as a favor, but as a signal that more people deserve to see what's really happening. And subscribe, because this is just one piece of the puzzle. There are more secrets buried in this system, and we're not done digging. The vault is open. Now it's up to you how deep you're willing to go.